please. We shall commence with the daily routine. Presenting and reading petitions. Presenting reports of committees. Tabling reports, regulations, and other papers. Statements by ministers. Government notices of motion. The Honourable the Premier.
Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future date I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas in this, the 250th anniversary of representative government in Nova Scotia, and whereas while many things have changed over those 2.5 centuries, the principles which inspire individuals to run for public office have stayed true. And whereas longevity in politics is certainly evidence of commitment to public service, and for 2 MLAs in this House, May 25th, 2008 marks their 15th year of public service. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of this House commend the Honourable Member for Clare and the Honourable Member for Cape Breton South on their 15 years of service to the province of Nova Scotia. Speaker, request waiver of notice passes without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favour signify by saying aye. Against? Motion is carried. Honourable the Minister of Natural Resources.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that at a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas National Mining Week is celebrated every year during the second week in May, and whereas this year, May the 12th to the 18th, is a time to recognize the important role the mining industry has played in our lives for centuries. And whereas today's modern mining industry provides technology, training, jobs, schools, hospitals, and homes, while ensuring their impact on the environment is minimal, therefore be it resolved that all members of this House recognize the contributions of the modern mining industry and its economic and social benefits to our province's communities. And Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favour signify by saying aye. Against? Motion is carried. The Honourable the Minister of Service, Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations. Not at this time. Introduction of bills. Notices of motion. The Honourable the Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas few votes cast in this House have a direct and immediate consequence to every household, and whereas an 8% tax on all household use of electricity will take effect today, May 15, 2008, if the Conservative budget is approved, despite widespread concern about energy prices. And whereas the government was elected with a specific pledge to end taxation on all household energy use, yet it is hiking taxes without any effort to restrain wasteful Tory practices, therefore be it resolved that Nova Scotians can look to Province House if they want to find individuals who are about to make a choice as to whether or not the people of the province will pay even higher energy costs. And Mr. Speaker, I would request waiver and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? I hear several noes. The motion is tabled. The Honourable the Member for Cape Breton South.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Kathy Lance, a resident of North Sydney, was recently presented the 2008 Apprenticeship Award of Excellence by the Nova Scotia Community College, and whereas the Apprenticeship Award of Excellence recognized the contributions of a newly certified journey person, and whereas after 4 years and many hours worth of practical experience, Kathy has realized her dream of being a female journeywoman in the male-dominated automotive trade. Therefore, be it resolved that members of the House of Assembly recognize the achievements of Kathy Lance and congratulate her on being given the 2008 Apprenticeship Award of Excellence. I would ask for waiver, Mr. Speaker.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Against? Motion is carried. The Honourable the Member for Halifax Needham on an introduction.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to draw the attention of members of the House to the West Gallery, where we're joined this morning by Danielle Trottier, who is a social work student at the Maritime School of Social Work and doing her field placement in my MLA office. And I'd ask Danielle to rise and receive the warm welcome of the House.
The Honourable the Member for Hants East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas corporations need communities and the people within these communities to exist and prosper, and whereas corporations who act responsibly and give back to their communities are rewarded. And whereas on May 9, 2008, the Corporate Volunteer of the Year Award for the Municipality of East Hants was given to Elmsdale Pharmasave. Therefore, it be resolved that the members of this House of Assembly congratulate owners and staff of the Elmsdale Pharmasave on their 2008 Corporate Volunteer of the Year Award and thank them for their contributions to their community. And, Mr. Speaker, I request waiver notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favour signify by saying aye. Against? Motion is carried. The Honourable the Leader of the Liberal Party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the Halifax Dartmouth Bridge Commission has decided to phase out the use of bridge tokens as a form of toll payment, and whereas Feed Nova Scotia are encouraging motorists to donate their unused tokens to their organization, and whereas the money from the donations of tokens will be used to help buy food for the 40,000 Nova Scotians who rely on the organization's approximately 150 food banks, shelters, soup kitchen, and school lunch programs. Therefore, be it resolved, the members of the House of Assembly congratulate Feed Nova Scotia on their creative fundraising efforts and encourage motorists to support their worthwhile cause. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favour signify by saying aye. Against? Motion is carried. The Honourable the Member for Halifax Shabukto.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the Maritime Conservatory of Performing Arts, formerly known as the Maritime Conservatory of Music, located on Shabukto Road in Halifax, on April 12th of 2008 celebrated the 120th year of its existence as the largest and oldest performing arts education institution east of Montreal. And whereas the Maritime Conservatory has educated performers in musical dance, choral, and orchestral performance since its inception in 1887. And whereas the Maritime Conservatory, a wholly non-profit institution, has instructed artists of all ages and guided rising stars through their formative years, therefore be it resolved that the House recognize the immense contribution of the Maritime Conservatory of Performing Arts to the cultural fabric of Nova Scotia, and be it further resolved that we, the members of this House, take this opportunity to thank a long line of dedicated instructors who have, through those 120 years, given of their time to enrich the lives not only of those who perform, but also the lives of those who take pleasure from enjoying artistic performance. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favour signify by saying aye. Against? Motion is carried. The Honourable the Member for Digby Annapolis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the future of the Prince of Acadia Ferry has been in question for some time, and whereas a study authored by Mayor Port Group of Digby predicts that the economy will see a loss of $36 million annually should the Prince of Acadia be shut down for good. Whereas the Digby Area Board of Trade is the latest group to voice their concern for the ferry service, calling for a comprehensive and coordinated plan to save this crossing. Therefore, be it resolved that the Premier and his government listen to the concerns of the Digby Area Board of Trade on this important issue and relay these concerns to the federal government. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favour signify by saying aye. Against? Motion is carried. The Honourable the Member for Halifax Citadel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the theme for Education Week 2008, Partners for Peace, from the classroom to the community, recognizes teachers and partners who help develop good citizens and contribute to a peaceful society. And whereas one of this year's Education Week Award recipients is Kathy Reed, a chemistry teacher at Citadel High School who teaches her students global responsibility and models it in her own life. And whereas Kathy Reed, inspired by her work with the Stephen Lewis Foundation's Grandmothers to Grandmothers campaign, initiated 20M by 2010, a province-wide school challenge to raise 20 million pennies for African relief and development by the year 2010. Therefore, be it resolved that members of the House of Assembly congratulate Kathy Reed and the students at Citadel High School for launching the Red Shoelace campaign to raise money and awareness for 20M by 2010. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Against? Motion is carried. The Honourable Member for Preston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas competing in the Boston Marathon has been Cindy Gill's dream since she took up competitive running 3 years ago. Whereas Cindy Gill completed her first full marathon in Kentville in October, which qualified her for the 112th annual race in Boston, and had trained all winter in minus 20-degree weather. Whereas on April 21, 2008, Cindy Gill realized her dream of running the Boston Marathon despite suffering a stress fracture below her right knee 32 kilometers into the race. She still pressed on through the pain to complete the last 10 kilometers. Therefore, be resolved that all members of this House congratulate Cindy Gill for her courage and determination on finishing the 42-kilometer Boston Marathon and wish her well in her recovery. I'd ask for waiver.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Against? Motion is carried. The Honourable Member for Queens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the 2008 Light Rocks Championship featured 30 teams from across the province and was held at CFB Halifax. And whereas the Liverpool Light Rocks team Chandler entered the championship despite not having their original coach and overcame adversity as one of the players became ill and the team completed the tournament with only 3 players. And whereas the team was newly formed, had never curled in any type of competition, and had only practiced together for 2 months. Therefore, be it resolved that this House of Assembly congratulate Skip Jacob Chandler, mate Andrew Corkum, second Cody Benvey, lead Luke Barnes, and coach Anthony Corkum for their provincial curling win of the 2008 Light Rocks Championship.
Where's waiver?
And I request waiver of notice without debate. Pass. Thank you.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Against? Motion is carried. The Honourable Member for Shelburne.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the Barrington Municipal High School Helen Gorham has been the driving force of a project called Memorial Garden, and whereas memory trees have been planted to create a garden on-site memorial at the school for students and staff who have passed away, and whereas the Memorial Garden has been embraced by students, the School Advisory Council, staff, and the entire community at large who have fundraised and created this garden on-site memorial. Therefore, be it resolved that the House of Assembly recognize Helen Gorham for her initiative in starting the Memorial Garden project at Barrington Municipal High School and commend the students, staff, parents who have contributed their time and effort. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Against? Motion is carried. The Honourable Member for Halifax Citadel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas youth in Nova Scotia have very few public venues in which to have their voices heard and to discuss issues that are important to their lives, and whereas the next generation of leaders in Nova Scotia have come together to publish Teens Now Talk, a Halifax-based teen magazine, the first in Atlantic Canada written by teens for teens. And whereas Teens Now Talk provides a platform for youth aged 13 to 24 to be seen and heard in this innovative, interactive, and informative publication, capturing the creative talents and knowledge of teens. Therefore, be it resolved that members of the House of Assembly congratulate youth throughout Atlantic Canada who contribute to Teens Now Talk and its editor, Jessica Bowden, and wish it continued success and a bright future. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for a waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Against? Motion is carried. The Honourable, the member for Queens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas school playground equipment is so important for the physical development of our young students, and whereas small communities within our province continue to work together to raise funds so that new school playground equipment can be provided at our schools, whereas 10,369 cans and 2 truckloads of bottles were collected from Charleston, Mill Village, Eastport Medway, Port Medway, and Danesville communities during a drive to raise funds for new equipment. Therefore, be it resolved that this House of Assembly congratulate the parents, the students, and the staff of Mill Village Consolidated School for raising the funds to go towards new playground equipment for the school and commend them for recognizing the importance of recreational and physical development programs. Mr. Speaker, a resolution that's dear to my heart, I do request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Against? Motion is carried. The Honourable, there has been a request to revert to the order of business presenting bills. Is it agreed? Oh, you have a resolution? Yes, there has been a request to revert to the order of business of presenting bills. Is it agreed? The Honourable, the member for Digby-Annapolis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to table a bill entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 4 of the Acts of 1992, the Emergency 911 Act.
The Honourable member begs leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 4 of the Acts of 1992, the Emergency 911 Act.
Bill number 174, an act to amend Chapter 4 of the Acts of 1992, the Emergency 911 Act.
Order that this bill be read for a second time on a future day. We will now move on to the orders of the day. Oral questions put by members. The time is now 9:26 and we will go till 10:26. The Honourable, the Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question will be for the Premier. Any Nova Scotian watching the television news last night saw that gasoline, diesel, and furnace oil prices are continuing to take another big jump. Now, people can blame market forces, big oil, peak oil, take your pick. But in Nova Scotia, the price of electricity is going up today, and for that, the people of Nova Scotia can blame the Premier. The typical Nova Scotia household will pay nearly $100 or more a year more because this government is breaking a key campaign commitment. So my question to the Premier is this: how can he justify adding further to the financial burden Nova Scotians are facing from rising energy prices?
The Honourable, the Premier.
Mr. Speaker, through you, Mr. Speaker, what my honourable colleague, Mr. Speaker, is going to vote against is a budget that puts more dollars into the hands of low-income Nova Scotians, Mr. Speaker, for home heating, to ensure that they have greater opportunity, Mr. Speaker, with the pressures that they will face this winter.
The Honourable, the Leader of the Official Opposition on his first supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When the Premier went on his March spending spree, there wasn't a cent for home heating assistance. And if he really wanted to help low-income Nova Scotians with record-high home heating costs, he would not offer a net benefit of $125, half of the assistance before he became Premier. With furnace oil prices already 30% higher than a year ago, how can the Premier, this is my question, how can the Premier boast about offering a net benefit that is so much lower than what Dr. Ham's government offered?
The Honourable the Premier.
Mr. Speaker, to my surprise, my colleague, Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the NDP, is saying he didn't agree with the investment we made in the Salvation Army at the end of last fiscal year, Mr. Speaker. I disagree with him. I think that was a good investment. That's why we're doubling it in today's budget, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable the Leader of the Official Opposition on his final supplementary.
Mr. Speaker.
Order, please. Order, please. The Honourable the Leader of the Official Opposition on his final supplementary.
Electricity tax is effective today, Mr. Speaker. That tax will be paid by every single household in Nova Scotia, those who heat with electricity and those who don't. Families who heat with electricity will pay even more for the next 4 months if they have to turn on the heat one of these chilly spring nights. Mr. Speaker, this is a tax grab, pure and simple. So my question for the Premier is this: why won't the Premier be honest enough here today to come clean and admit that the 8% electricity tax breaks his own government's commitment?
Honourable the Premier.
Speaker, the Leader of the NDP is against a heating assistance program for low-income Nova Scotians. The Leader of the NDP is against an assistance program for our seniors receiving GIS, Mr. Speaker. The Leader of the NDP is against, Mr. Speaker, Nova Scotians having a balanced budget. Well, this side of the House is not.
Honourable the Leader of the Liberal Party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is for the Premier. Today we see another big increase at the pumps in several other jurisdictions. Many predictions have our price increasing anywhere from 5 to 9 cents. On the same day, Nova Scotians read in the newspaper that the price at the pumps might be increasing. They see news of a campaign highlighting just how high our taxes are here in Nova Scotia. Nova Scotians understand world pressure on the price of gas, but they can't understand being gouged by their own government. So my question to the Premier is, between the higher tax and regulation, why are you committed to higher pricing for Nova Scotians?
The Honourable the Premier.
Speaker, the government is committed to stability for Nova Scotians. We are committed to doing all we can to help rural stations, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the question that my honourable colleague raises is a good question. And the dollars that we receive, Mr. Speaker, are dollars that we need for road improvements in our province. And, Mr. Speaker, it is also a question of affordability for the people of our province. And, Mr. Speaker, at such a time when this province can see our province's roads in the shape and the condition we want to see them, at such time, Mr. Speaker, we can give stronger consideration to giving some relief on those taxes.
The Honourable the Leader of the Official Opposition, or the Liberal Party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, the Canadian Taxpayer Federation began its annual gas tax honesty campaign to lower government taxes on gasoline. The Federation believes government has been gouging consumers for far too long. And here in Nova Scotia, we couldn't agree more. Nova Scotians want a fair price. They know we can't control the world price, but they are angry when they see a 10-cent difference with their neighbours. So my question to the Premier is, why are you leaving it up to a citizens' organization to campaign for fairer prices for Nova Scotians?
The Honourable the Premier.
Mr. Speaker, we stand by what is put in place. We've also made a commitment to the people of this province to do a review. That review will take place starting in July.
The Honourable the Leader of the Liberal Party on his final supplementary.
We're getting closer, Mr. Speaker. This morning, New Brunswick raised the price of gas by 5 cents a litre. Prince Edward Island raised the price of gas by 5 cents a litre. Diesel is showing a large increase in PEI in Newfoundland by 9 to 11 cents, Mr. Speaker. Speculation today in Nova Scotia is the price will increase anywhere from 5 to 9 cents a litre. People in this province are struggling to make ends meet, and this government is making it harder and even harder for those Nova Scotians. So my question to the Premier is, your pricing program and high taxes have harmed Nova Scotians long enough. Will you finally do the right thing and give Nova Scotians a tax break at the pump?
Honourable the Premier.
There is a significant difference between what we are doing and what they are doing in PEI. Speaker, in Nova Scotia, we have a balanced budget. In PEI, they don't, Mr. Speaker. In Nova Scotia, we are able, Mr. Speaker, to invest those dollars back into our highways, and by law, we must, Mr. Speaker. And because of that, we are seeing work going to be done and has been done from one end of this province to the other.
The Honourable the Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is for the Premier. As fuel prices skyrocket, the price of diesel fuel is expected to lead the way, with forecasts of a pump price that will soon be $1.50 a litre, Mr. Speaker. Diesel is used to move most of our food and consumer goods, and the high price of that fuel translates quickly into more trouble for every family that has to make ends meet. So my question to the Premier is this: what steps is his government taking to help Nova Scotians deal with higher diesel fuel costs?
The Honourable the Minister of Service Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations.
Thank you, Speaker. And as the honourable member knows, that only around 10% of the diesel fuel used in our province is regulated. The major carriers strike a contract with the suppliers, and it's not part of the regulated market. Also, the commercial carriers, as you know, do get a HST rebate. So, Mr. Speaker, the price of diesel, and that really is something that has risen even more dramatically than the price of gasoline. But the position of the province has been is that we can't control the price of diesel any more than really we can effectively control the price of gasoline, and the market forces have to be allowed to play out.
The Honourable the Leader of the Official Opposition on his first supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, that will be cold comfort to many people in this province, and I mean it, cold comfort. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Education expects that school boards to take the higher cost of heating fuel out of their classroom budgets. Hospitals, community-based agencies, and yes, transit systems have all been left to make cuts or increase fees to cover the fast rising price of fuel. So my question to the Premier is this: does the Premier have any plan to address the impact of sharply higher fuel costs other than downloading those costs and then adding them to the burden already felt?
The Honourable the Premier.
Speaker, what the Leader of the NDP is saying, Mr. Speaker, is that we need to do more to help those in our education system and our healthcare system. He is going to vote against a budget that puts more money into the hands of our healthcare system for frontline healthcare workers. He's going to vote against a budget that brings our tuition rates, Mr. Speaker, down to the national average for our students in our universities. That is what he and his members are going to do. He is going to vote against a budget that puts more money in the hands of our school boards, not less, Mr. Speaker. If he truly wants to help those school boards, Mr. Speaker, he should be voting and doing the right thing for this budget.
The Honourable the Leader of the Official Opposition on his final supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are going to do the right thing. We're going to vote against an out-of-touch and incompetent government, Mr. Speaker. That's what we're going to do. Mr. Speaker, Nova Scotians.
Order, please. Order, please. Order, please. The Honourable the Leader of the Official Opposition on his final supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, Nova Scotians began lining up at the pumps last night to fill their tanks in anticipation of price increases that are coming tomorrow. This government has not been able to produce a climate change plan on schedule. It cancelled its own plan to conduct an energy audit of all public buildings, and it couldn't even, Mr. Speaker, organize the distribution of free low-energy light bulbs, Mr. Speaker. So my question for the Premier is this: where is the leadership for this province, the key industries like fisheries and transportation, to deal with much higher fuel prices?
Order, please. Order. Order, please. The Honourable the Premier.
Mr. Speaker, there's a party, the NDP, Mr. Speaker, asking a question about fisheries. While the fishermen in my area and the fishermen from Pictou County and Queens County and Shelburne, Mr. Speaker, want to see that new program for the loans program for new fishermen. They want to see help for those in the fishing industry. And what are they going to do? What are they going to do, Mr. Speaker? They're going to vote against. Mr. Speaker, what the NDP are going to do today is to vote against coastal communities and fishermen in this province.
The Honourable, the Leader of the Official Opposition on a new question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question will be for the out-of-touch Premier. The Premier has been quick to answer Nova Scotians.
Order, please. I'm having very much difficulty hearing the member speak. Order. The Honourable, the Leader of the Official Opposition on a new question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I couldn't hear you because the Minister of Transportation was asking for more taxes to go up. So, Mr. Speaker, the Premier has been quick to assure Nova Scotians that his government takes a serious approach to the Auditor General's reports and recommendations. The Auditor General had a lot to say about a previous project that went $22 million over budget. Now, people can see just how this Premier safeguards the public's money. So my question is this: how can the Premier explain his government's failure to provide Nova Scotians with timely, comprehensive reporting on project status about the new IWK Children's Wing as recommended by the Auditor General?
The Honourable, the Premier.
Let's talk about healthcare, Mr. Speaker. Here we have a party, the NDP, who has a front in the Citizens Healthcare Coalition. Perhaps, Mr. Speaker, my honourable colleague would like to clear the air today. What is the relationship between he and the NDP and the Citizens Healthcare Coalition in this province?
The Honourable, the Leader of the Opposition on his first supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, 40 million taxpayer dollars were on the line, and yet this government skipped meetings where additional costs for the IWK project was on the agenda. The minister just says that he was kept in the dark, Mr. Speaker. But if the Premier had made sure his government followed the advice coming from the Auditor General's review of past mistakes, the cost of every change in the project would have been identified. There would have been a cost center on the government's book to track all costs of the IWK project. So my question for the Premier is this: what is the Premier going to do about a minister who found himself in the dark with millions of taxpayers' dollars at stake?
The Honourable, the Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I'm glad to hear my honourable colleague agrees with the government on our strategic infrastructure partnerships and the initiative we're moving forward on, Mr. Speaker. I look forward to hearing more support in that regard in the months ahead. Mr. Speaker, there is more money in our 7th consecutive balanced budget for the people of this province today, a budget which they say they are going to vote against, Mr. Speaker, a budget which sees a new farmer care program for the 180,000 Nova Scotians without a drug plan, a budget which sees a new self-care telecare program, Mr. Speaker, for 7 days a week, 24 hours, Mr. Speaker, right across this province. That is what the NDP want to vote against today, Mr. Speaker. That is what the people of our province know. That is what they will pay for at the polls the next time we go there.
The Leader of the Official Opposition on his final supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, Mr. Speaker, the people who will decide who pays what and when, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when the Auditor General reviewed and reported on the cost overruns at the Correctional Centre, the government's response did not include a commitment to learn from its mistakes, errors, and poor public reporting. This week, Nova Scotians have learned that tracking and accountability for major projects seem to be even worse. The government would rather offer excuses than fix the problem. So my question for the Premier is this: will the Premier finally show some leadership and make sure that every member of his cabinet knows that they can no longer sit in the dark, that they must adopt the diligence recommended by the Auditor General?
The Honourable, the Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Order, please. The Honourable, the Minister of Health.
I'll wait.
Order, please. The Honourable, the Minister of Health has the floor.
No, I'm just gonna wait, Mr. Speaker.
I would remind all members that we need to be able to hear each other as we're speaking here today. Be not a good day to be voting from outside the chamber. The Honourable, the Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I explained yesterday, it was sometimes in October that the department became aware of the cost overruns at the IWK. Mr. Speaker, we were being told that the project was on schedule, it was on budget. We found out in October that it was not. It was immediately that we hired the company of Wilson Fit, I believe, to review the project that was happening at the IWK. We were found that we were kept in the dark by individuals during the project management team. Mr. Speaker, we made changes to retrofit that. But what I can say, Mr. Speaker, that apparently the leader of the opposition, the leader of the NDP, is against the renovation of the IWK, is against taking care of cancer patients, is against pharmacare program. Mr. Speaker, we will do the right thing. We will fund that project as we should. Mr. Speaker, again, we want to look at all our projects that we're doing in this province, make sure that they're done on time and on budget. Mr. Speaker, they're the ones that are in the dark constantly.
The Honourable, the member for Digby-Annapolis.
Mr. Speaker, there seems to be a little unrest in the House here this morning.
I've noticed.
Maybe I can calm it down, and then again, maybe not. Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Tourism. Mr. Speaker, it's been quite a week for the Minister. First, the Minister said that he didn't understand why large promotional ads of New Brunswick were a threat to Nova Scotia tourism. Then on May the 13th, the Minister was asked why he was encouraging Nova Scotians to vacation in New Brunswick. And his response was, I suggest that the member across the way should go up and enjoy a game of hockey. My question to the Minister, will the Minister explain what me watching a game of hockey has to do with New Brunswick winning the advertising war of Nova Scotia?
The Honourable, the Minister of Tourism, Culture and Heritage.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, for that question. And once again, it was reflective of demonstrating the tourists that are in Halifax, which reflects on the, the initiatives that we take to promote our great and wonderful province. Tourism, Mr. Speaker, is about a number of things. Tourism is about our mountains in Cape Breton, about our rugged coastline, Mr. Speaker, about our great life in the urban areas. Mr. Speaker, mostly important, tourism is about you, Mr. Speaker, about our people, Mr. Speaker, and also about the member across the way who is always interested in asking the member questions about tourism. So, Mr. Speaker, to the member, I was asking him to go up and to see the wonderful amount of people that have enjoyed what we have to offer.
The Honourable, the member for Digby-Annapolis on his first supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I know I told members of the legislature that it gets better. Well, Mr. Speaker, it just keeps getting better. Yesterday, when asked to explain his department's baffling advertising budget, the minister responded by saying $1.3 billion. Mr. Speaker, in 2002, tourism revenues were at $1.3 billion. 2003, $1.2 billion. 2004, $1.3. 2005, $1.2. 2006, $1.3. 2007, $1.3. Tourism revenue in Nova Scotia hasn't increased in 6 years. My question is, why is the minister praising the $1.3 billion in tourism revenue when the department clearly has not increased revenues since 2002?
The Honourable, the Minister of Tourism, Culture and Heritage.
Well, thank you. It's clear, Mr. Speaker, that the Liberal caucus have better researchers than the NDP caucus with that information that's been provided here today. Mr. Speaker, I always enjoy... Mr. Speaker? With the cat calls, it's obvious why they're voting no against the budget, Mr. Speaker.
Order, please. The Honourable, the member for Digby-Annapolis on his final supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, tourism revenue has not increased in this province in 6 years. What is more startling, Mr. Speaker, is that when you take into account inflation since 2002, Nova Scotia has actually experienced 13.2% decrease. Mr. Speaker, the minister says, I don't understand. Well, Mr. Speaker, I don't understand why the minister is patting himself on the back when tourism revenue has actually decreased under his leadership. My question is, will the minister finally come clean and admit to Nova Scotia that he doesn't understand the tourism industry?
The Honourable, the Minister of Tourism, Culture and Heritage.
Mr. Speaker, obviously the member is taking it to a different level. Mr. Speaker, I can assure you that this minister is very concerned about the challenges in regards to tourism. Mr. Speaker, I would suggest that the member should take an opportunity to speak to me and to encourage him to understand the issues that we have facing us in tourism here in Nova Scotia. We have spent millions of dollars in marketing and advertising campaign. Mr. Speaker, we're in partnerships with our federal government and other maritime provinces to promote the wonderful and the great product that we have here to share with other parts of the world. And Mr. Speaker, I suggest that tourism in Nova Scotia is not stagnant. Matter of fact, Mr. Speaker, I suggest that with the difficult situation that tourism globally finds itself in, that we are on top of things, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
The Honourable, the member for Sackville-Cobequid.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is for the Minister of Health. The Minister is quoted in today's Chronicle Herald as saying he was in the dark about the $10 million in cost overrun for the renovations at the IWK. I'd like to turn the spotlight on the QE2 emergency room construction so we can see the situation there more clearly. Construction has only begun ongoing for about a year, and already the Minister of Health has forked over another $2.5 million to keep this project going, Mr. Speaker. So I'd like to ask the Minister of Health, was the Minister kept in the dark about the cost overruns as well at the QE2 ER?
The Honourable, the Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And no, Mr. Speaker, we knew exactly what was going on at the QE2 ER. Mr. Speaker, we knew that because of labor costs, because of construction inflation, that the project was going to be coming in over budget.
The Honourable, the member for Sackville-Cobequid on his first supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister wanted to blame others about the IWK cost overruns, but the Costello Fit report clearly stated, and I quote, the Department of Health was complicit to some extent through its relative passive role in monitoring the project, spotty attendance at the Pediatric Redevelopment Project Committee meeting, and failure to inquire closely into financial consequences of the out-of-scope that its representatives knew was being undertaken, end of quote, Mr. Speaker. So I'd like to ask the Minister, can the Minister assure this House that he is not playing a passive role in the QE2 ER construction and that his staff are attending the construction meetings and paying attention to the escalating costs?
The Honourable, the Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, we're very attentive with this one. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to work with the Building and Project Committee. Mr. Speaker, and we will continue to invest in the health care of Nova Scotians. We have a budget that is strong upon health care, on frontline health care workers, on construction of new hospitals and new equipment. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to deliver for Nova Scotians.
The Honourable, the member for Sackville-Cobequid on his final supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, a month ago, the Premier said in a column, I quote, the bedrock of my government has been solid fiscal management, end quote. So I'd like to ask the Minister, does this out-of-touch, in-the-dark health minister consider overruns of $10 million and $2.5 million a solid bedrock for his department spending, Mr. Speaker?
Honourable, the Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I can tell you that I'm very proud of our Premier, very proud of our government for presenting the 7th balanced budget in this province. Mr. Speaker, I am very proud of the work that we are doing when it comes to a family pharmacare program. I'm very proud of the seniors pharmacare program. I'm very proud of the self-care telecare program. Mr. Speaker, I am proud of the work that this government does on behalf of all Nova Scotians. I'm actually ashamed of the NDP.
The Honourable, the member for Queens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is for the Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal. This government is out of touch with the needs of Nova Scotians. The Premier advises Nova Scotians to take the bus, take the opportunity
Order,
for
please.
transit. Oh, sorry. The Premier advises Nova Scotians to take the bus, take up the opportunity for transit. But the government has no plan for transit and no clue how to expand public transit in the province. As the Ecology Action Centre has pointed out, the transit tax credit contained in the budget is one of the most expensive and least effective options for reducing emissions. Such programs cost over $1,000 to reduce 1 ton of greenhouse gas emissions. My question to the Minister, how can he justify introducing such an expensive, ineffective program?
The Honourable the Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the honourable member opposite for the question. There are two things in this year's budget that the NDP are going to vote against. For the very specific issue she's talking about, there's $3 million in this year's budget for transit for municipalities throughout the province to take an opportunity to take advantage of. There's also a tax credit, Mr. Speaker, for those who would take advantage of transit system in this province.
The Honourable the Member for Queens on her first supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, people who already take the bus will appreciate the tax credit, but others won't make the switch unless better, more reliable transit is available. In many parts of Nova Scotia, there is no public transit, and in HRM, the buses are already full at rush hour. According to the head of Metro Transit, the system has already reached peak capacity. My question to the Minister, did he consult the professionals at Metro Transit before introducing the tax credit?
The Honourable the Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the member opposite for the question. Mr. Speaker, this government consults with all stakeholders on all issues. Mr. Speaker, the federal government has made money available this year as well. As we know, the HRM has decided how they're going to spend their $13 million. But, Mr. Speaker, just in contrast to what the honourable member just said, I beg to differ, and I'll give you a good example, Mr. Speaker, my own constituency, Cumberland South, a lady by the name of Dora Fuller and Paul Hill, who've been working very hard in regards to providing transit in a very rural area of Nova Scotia. And, Mr. Speaker, the opportunity we provide under this government and this budget this year that they're going to vote against, by the way, will give an opportunity for rural Nova Scotians in my own constituency. It will give an opportunity. Mr. Speaker, we give an opportunity for people in rural Nova Scotia, for example, my own area, to take advantage of transportation they presently don't have, but because of our budget and that $3 million, Mr. Speaker, people coming to South will be better off. No thanks to the NDP.
The Honourable the Member for Queens on her final supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, I'll table a document entitled Bus Blues where there is an indication that not much dialogue has happened with Metro Transit. Mr. Speaker, this government has a history of ignoring public transit in the province. The $3 million in this year's budget is a mere drop in the bucket. When added to the tiny amounts from other years, provincial funding for public transit works out to less than $4 per capita compared for other Canadian provinces of nearly $18 per capita, which, with such abysmal levels of funding,
please. The Honourable the Member for Queens has the floor.
With such abysmal levels of funding, Mr. Speaker, we can't afford to spend money on tax credits that won't work. My question to the Minister, when will he come up with a plan for a real sustainable public transit system?
The Honourable the Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it's amazing. It's amazing. They want to huff and puff. They want to push and pull. Which is it, Mr. Speaker? The honourable member and the honourable leader of the Tax and Spend Party, they want to give everybody everything. They want to say yes to everything. And today, Mr. Speaker, we're going to say no to a budget that gives 65 great things for Nova Scotia, Mr. Speaker, from police to volunteer firefighters, Mr. Speaker, to nurses, to teachers. Mr. Speaker, Nova Scotia will benefit from this budget. And what's the answer the NDP are giving, Mr. Speaker? No, it's a great budget for Nova Scotia.
The Honourable the Member for Glace Bay.
Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Health, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, Statistics Canada released a report which didn't surprise anyone. When you are tired, stressed, overworked, and repeatedly asked to come in to work your day off, mistakes happen. The results were released based on a comprehensive survey of nurses across the country. It clearly showed government is asking them to do too much with too little support. The ones paying the price are patients. Interestingly enough, Mr. Speaker, Nova Scotia had the highest survey response in the country, showing that nurses here are concerned about what's happening in their work environment. My question for the minister is, could the minister please outline what specific steps he has taken or will take with nurses and nurses' unions to address the underlying causes of yesterday's survey results?
The Honourable the Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I welcome the question. Of course, we recognize the nurses in Nova Scotia and most places are working very, very hard. Mr. Speaker, we'll continue to invest in our $6 million nursing strategy, which has a number of issues in it to address the work-life balance and a healthy workplace. Mr. Speaker, as I mentioned during my estimates, we're working with the Model of Care Initiative, which lets individuals work to their full scope of practice, looks at different care teams, looks at ways of dropping that workload for nurses. Mr. Speaker, the other thing we're doing, of course, is adding nursing seats so that we have more nurses working in this province.
The Honourable the Member for Glace Bay on his first supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, nurses across the province are professional and caring, dedicated people, and they don't like the results of that survey. They'd rather see government do something to address the underlying causes that they've been warning the government about for some time. So my next question for the minister is, could the minister tell us whether there's any initiative in an acute care setting in this province that has been established to reduce the burden on nurses and therefore improve their work environment?
The Honourable the Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and of course, through our transformation document, through the FISOR report, the recommendation was to look at the model of care. The model of care for nurses in particular, look at the care that is being given on floors, in ICUs, in emergency rooms. Mr. Speaker, as a part of that, we have a number of professionals working on this model of care initiative, which will see individuals working to the full scope of practice. It will look at the addition of individuals like clerks, porters, other health team professionals, which will take that workload off nurses and let nurses be the clinicians that they are trained to be. So, Mr. Speaker, it is being met with lots of enthusiasm by the healthcare workers, by nurses in this province, and we look forward to having that model of care available in the near future.
The Honourable the Member for Glace Bay on his final supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, the data that was released in that survey yesterday is 3 years old. And if you ask nurses, it applies as much to today as it did back then. So nothing has changed. So my final question for the minister is, will he commit to sitting down with nurses and nurses' unions to establish specific goals and a timetable to achieve those goals in order to improve the workplace environment of nurses sooner rather than later?
The Honourable the Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, the work has already begun. Mr. Speaker, the enthusiasm is already there. We do have a number of individuals and nurses that are on this Model of Care Initiative team that have basically held off their retirement so they can work on this exciting initiative. Mr. Speaker, I know that they are meeting with all people involved in this issue. Mr. Speaker, there is a lot of enthusiasm about this that will make changes for nurses in this province.
The Honourable the Member for Halifax Atlantic.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and my question is for the Minister of Tourism, Culture and Heritage. As the Minister knows, like many other people, people with disabilities enjoy travelling, but they do have quite specific needs about accessibility to accommodations and the attractions offered in the province. When you look at Destination Nova Scotia, there are nearly 300 accommodations that list that they have the wheelchair accessible symbol. But tourists with mobility challenges often get to these places and find that the symbol has actually guaranteed them nothing at all. So I asked the Minister, what criteria must a business meet in order to display the wheelchair accessible symbol in the Doers and Dreamers Guide?
The Honourable the Minister of Tourism, Culture and Heritage.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and to the member across the way. She's quite right. Mr. Speaker, we welcome all people to Nova Scotia to enjoy what we have to offer. Mr. Speaker, first of all, like any other small businesses in Nova Scotia, or businesses I should say, there's certain criteria municipally and provincially that they should meet to meet the needs of the disabled.
The Honourable the Member for Halifax Atlantic on her first supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, we hear from tourists and advocates for disabled persons who've gotten to accommodations and literally cannot get in the door. And that symbol really doesn't mean anything without clear standards in this context. And in fact, the Accessible Nova Scotia Committee has said they'd rather not see the symbol at all than have it not be reliable. Without these standards, it would be perhaps better simply to put a notice on the website or in the Doers and Dreamers guides advising tourists to watch out for themselves, call individual operators, and see whether their needs will be met. So I ask the Minister, will he make changes to the website and departmental publications to make sure that unreliable symbols are not being posted?
The Honourable Minister of Tourism, Culture and Heritage.
Mr. Speaker, a great question, and once again I'll say to the member across the way, it's our appetite to make all people in Nova Scotia with disabilities or not to enjoy our facilities, and yes, I'll make sure that we review and move forward to a plan that all can enjoy.
The Honourable Member for Halifax Atlantic on her final supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Minister, and I appreciate that because disappointment is a terrible dish to serve people who come to this province, as well as to the many people who are members of the disabled community in this province. There are other examples I would offer. It's possible to rate on mobility, various scales of mobility. I ask the Minister when, in fact, will he take these steps to make sure that disabled tourists can rely on what they're offered?
The Honourable Minister of Tourism, Culture and Heritage.
As soon as possible, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Halifax Clayton Park.
Mr. Speaker, my question today is for the Minister of Health Promotion and Protection. On May 7th, in question period, I asked the Minister if he would meet with the executive of the Build It Right Community Action Group to discuss the Mainland Common Recreation Centre. The Minister answered, and I will quote from Hansard, his answer was, "In fact, I've met with members of the Build It Right group," unquote. Mr. Speaker, I have a letter from the Build It Right group co-chairs dated yesterday, May 14th, in which they state, and I will quote, "We categorically deny any meeting with the Minister despite our repeated requests," and I will table that letter. My question to the Minister is, given his earlier statement, can he now back up that statement and tell the House who he met with at Build It Right?
The Honourable Minister of Health Promotion and Protection.
Well, Mr. Speaker, as I had indicated earlier in question period, I have met with members of the Build It Right group. More importantly, Mr. Speaker, our province is committed to building the right kind of facility in Halifax Regional Municipality. We will continue to work with Halifax Regional Municipality so that the facility in the members' area is the right facility for this province, for that area, and serves the people that we represent, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Halifax Clayton Park on her first supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, I have given the Minister an opportunity to set the record straight. If he's spoken to Build It Right members from the Mainland Common Recreation Centre project, then I would expect that he should welcome the opportunity to say so. Mr. Speaker, the people of HRM have been met with a patronising cone of silence around this project, and now it seems that the provincial government is practicing the same lack of transparency. The Minister has said that the proposal to the federal minister has been delivered in person, yet the Minister says he's not able to tell us what the components are or what the provincial contribution is going to be. My question to the Minister, Mr. Speaker, is will you tell the members of this House how much money your government has committed to spend on the Mainland Common project?
Honourable Minister of Health Promotion and Protection.
Well, Mr. Speaker, as I've said before, that we will continue to be a strong partner in this particular project. The approach that we've taken, that I've taken as the Minister, is to work with the municipality, not against them. And I believe that the citizens of that area of Halifax Regional Municipality will be very satisfied with the project once it's announced by the regional municipality, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Halifax Clayton Park on her final supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, why so secretive? The province was proud to announce $10 million in Bridgewater, proud to announce $700,000 in Antigonish and $5 million in Liverpool. Oh, very proud, but unable to tell us here in HRM what their commitment is. The government claims to be open and accountable, but each time their ministers practice this kind of habit, they are not doing so. They should learn to practice what they preach. Provincial tax dollars are involved in this project, Mr. Speaker, and the Minister should be better informed by speaking to community members. My question to the Minister is, Give me the names of who you met with at Build It Right, and will you commit to meet with the executive of Build It Right?
The Honourable the Minister of Health Protection and Promotion.
What I will say, Mr. Speaker, is that we are very proud of our investment in the Building Facility Infrastructure Program, Mr. Speaker. We have invested in projects around this province. We will continue to do so because it's absolutely the right thing to do, Mr. Speaker. We will put people in front of politics. We will make sure that those kinds of announcements happen when they're appropriate, Mr. Speaker, and we will make sure that there are facilities for our constituents to be able to take advantage of, Mr. Speaker, because it's the right thing to do.
The Honourable the Member for Waverley Fall River Beaverbank.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Education. This morning on CBC, the Minister confirmed what we've already heard from the Halifax Regional School Board. The board has to come up with the money to pay for its elections this fall. For years, the department has covered the cost of school board elections. Now, suddenly, it's the responsibility of the board to pull $340,000 out of its pocket to pay for this October's election. Can the minister tell me where the HRSB's budget they are going to find this money?
The Honourable the Minister of Education.
Mr. Speaker, for the information of the House, the cost of elections, school board elections, is a shared cost. 60% of the cost of the 2004 election was borne by the municipality, 30% by the board, and 10% by the CSAP board to cover costs for the Halifax board elections. And so we will be looking at the partnership and the relationship and the percentages that are determined by both of those, by three of those, all three parties, and determine at the end of that what the cost and amount will be for the Halifax board.
The Honourable the Member for Waverley Fall River Beaverbank on his first supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the province has chosen as a matter of public policy to have elected school boards. Under the Provincial Education Act, the province has the responsibility of overseeing the democratic process of the boards and governing the expenses associated with having elected boards. My question for the minister, doesn't paying for democracy go hand in hand with requiring democracy?
The Honourable the Minister of Education.
Mr. Speaker, for the information of the member opposite in the House, the organization of elections in this province for school boards is run by the municipality.
The Honourable the Member for Waverley Fall River Beaverbank on his final supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, this government boasts of a surplus in its proposed budget.
Order, please. The Honourable the Member for Waverley Fall River Beaverbank has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now we're seeing one of the ways they've achieved that surplus by downloading costs to school boards which have no tax power of their own. So my question for the minister, can she tell the House which students are going to lose out to pay for the province's refusal to fund board elections?
The Honourable the Minister of Education.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to respond by saying that over the last 5 years, with the Halifax Board in particular, this government has given them an additional $72 million. That was in the face of declining enrollment. I would also like to say that overall, the budget that we have before the House at this point in time shows a 4% increase to all boards across the province. And I would also add, Mr. Speaker, that I would not expect that any of our elected board members would take away programs and services from students as a priority.
The Honourable the Member for Sackville-Cobequid.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is for the Minister of Health. I doubt the minister will disagree that the 32-year-old Home for Special Care Act is outdated, and there are several gaps on issues such as residents' rights and standards of care. In fact, the Act, regulations, and policy manuals do not address issues such as use of chemical or physical restraints or how frequently incontinence supplies should be changed. Nursing homes set their own restraints policy with no provincial standards to follow. So I'd like to ask the minister, when will his government introduce standards of care to protect individuals in nursing home residents throughout Nova Scotia, Mr. Speaker?
Honourable the Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And of course, throughout this continuing care strategy, the expansion of services in this province. There is a focus on the care, make sure that there is a standard approach across this province. Mr. Speaker, through the training courses with the continuing care assistance, with the training that the homes will be providing, a lot of this information will be available to all nursing staff that take care of our loved ones.
The Honourable Member for Sackville-Cobequid on a first supplementary.
But we still need legislation, Mr. Speaker. The Act is 32 years old. I believe the Minister and myself were 5 years old when that legislation was introduced. So I'll table part of the June 2007 Auditor General's report, and it states, and I quote, "Our reviews of the licensing and inspection process revealed several deficiencies, and we concluded significant improvements are required to ensure residents' care needs and DOH requirements are met," end quote. Infrequent changes, unsafe use of restraints, and other safety issues have been in the spotlight in other provinces. So I'd like to ask the Minister of Health, how can we know these issues are being appropriately addressed in nursing homes without clear standards in place?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much. Of course, our monitoring and evaluation branch does monitor the homes across this province to make sure that they're offering a safe and welcoming place for our seniors to live. Mr. Speaker, we'll continue to monitor those facilities as such. Mr. Speaker, we'll continue to expand the role of continuing care in our province. We'll continue with our $260 million investment in this year's budget when it comes to continuing care for all Nova Scotians.
The Honourable Member for Sackville-Cobequid on his final supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll say it again. We need updated legislation. It's 32 years old, Mr. Speaker. The Auditor General also made recommendations in 2003 regarding nursing home accountabilities. And I guess that part is part of the 42% of recommendations in 2003 that the government haven't completed yet. So I'd like to ask the Minister, when can we finally expect a new Homes for Special Care Act and the standards to ensure that nursing home residents get the appropriate care they deserve?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member opposite for his concern for patients in this province, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to monitor this. Mr. Speaker, we have the monitoring and evaluation branch that looks at care in this province, make sure that homes are up to our standards. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to do that. We still have $262 million to address the health care needs of seniors through our continuing care strategy, where construction has begun on 1,000 new long-term care beds that will be open and serving families in 2010. Mr. Speaker, we will continue with those investments. They are contained with this in this year's budget. This budget that we are supporting, the Liberals are supporting, but the NDP are turning their back on Nova Scotians.
The Honourable Member for Halifax-Clayton Park.
Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Immigration. One of the streams under the nominee program is the International Graduate Stream. According to the information sheet posted on the Minister's website, it is stated, and I quote, "The Nova Scotia nominee program does not have a specific occupation or skill shortage list. However, only certain types of jobs and occupations are approved for nomination." My question to the Minister is, can the Minister please indicate what types of jobs and occupations are approved for nomination under the International Graduate Stream?
Honourable the Minister of Immigration.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I think it's and thank you for the question. I think it's very important to note the Department of Immigration under the International Graduate Stream, under all streams really, look to the sector and look to business within the province to ensure that we are always looking to the employment and workspace shortages within the province, and we always key on those areas where it's very important for us to seek out people in sectors where we are short employment or we are looking to reinforce it within the province. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable the Member for Halifax-Clayton Park on her first supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, the information sheet is terribly confusing. Well, the Minister says it's employer-driven, and so does the website. The government also says it will only consider certain types of jobs and occupations. It's telling international graduates that while government does not have a specific occupation or skill shortage list, it may be possible that they will not be approved because their skills aren't on that non-existent list. Mr. Speaker, I ask the Minister, can the Minister say that the International Graduate graduate stream is employer-driven and yet only considers certain types of jobs and occupations that are not spelled out?
The Honourable the Minister of Immigration.
Thank you again, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, under the nominee program right now, the international graduate stream, along with the skilled worker streams, are two very, very important streams to this province. The international graduate stream, Mr. Speaker, is one that I look forward to the future for a great expansion. We have over 5,000 international students within Nova Scotia at this time in our universities, and Mr. Speaker, I look forward to the future, and I look forward to many of them entering our workforce here on a local basis and entering jobs and fields that are badly needed by this province, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
The Honourable the Member for Halifax-Clayton Park on her final supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, we are desperately short of qualified people to fill certain jobs and occupations, and yet the minister has indicated on the website that he does not have a specific occupation or skill shortage list. One would think that we would welcome qualified international graduates, as the minister said, to fill those positions for which there is a need. My question to the minister is that if the Nova Scotia nominee program does not have a specific occupation or skill shortage list, how does he know if he's turning away international graduates who possess skills for which there is a shortage in this province?
The Honourable the Minister of Immigration.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And once again, the Department of Immigration under the nominee program, we try to monitor it, Mr. Speaker, as closely as possible, ensuring that the international graduates that are given permanent residency within the province of Nova Scotia are in the areas that are deemed to be ones that are necessary within the province to fill workspace shortages, Mr. Speaker. The Department of Immigration welcomes all of immigrants into this province, Mr. Speaker, and we look forward to the continual increase under the international graduate stream as part of the nominee program, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable the Member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Community Services. Shelter allowances for unemployment and support and income assistance clients are falling very short of what is needed in order to rent safe and appropriate housing in most parts of this province. When I asked the Minister why her department has not been increasing shelter allowances, she indicated that it's because landlords simply increase their rents whenever the allowance goes up. So the Minister's answer is simply to keep shelter allowances frozen. I asked the Minister why hasn't her staff explored ways to address this problem rather than freezing shelter allowances.
The Honourable the Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to rise for the second day in a row and address this issue. Since it was raised yesterday, I'm pleased to stand and again reply to it, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, through the income assistance, an increase of 15.6%, Mr. Speaker, representative of this side of the House's understanding of the needs of the Nova Scotians who come to us, Mr. Speaker. We had a 2-year increase in shelter allowance, Mr. Speaker. Again, a recognition from this side of the House that we understood the needs of those vulnerable Nova Scotians. Mr. Speaker, in estimates, when the honourable member asked me a question about shelter allowance, I indicated that that was one of the concerns, that sometimes the increases simply go back to the landlords and the individuals are not able to utilize those increases appropriately. And Mr. Speaker, the honourable member agreed with me that that was a concern, and so I'm a bit surprised today, Mr. Speaker, that the honourable member is raising it as a surprise to him, since he indicated during estimates debate that he agreed with that. So, Mr. Speaker, perhaps he should reflect upon the needs of Nova Scotians and support the government today in its budget, which will see an increase to those Nova Scotians who truly need it, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable the Member for Dartmouth North on his first supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, what I do agree with is that an increase is necessary, and it's not a $4 increase on personal allowances that's going to be sufficient for Nova Scotians. Mr. Speaker, if the minister had put more affordable housing funding towards equity co-ops and nonprofit housing instead of private landlords, it would give better options for ESIA clients. If her department ensured that no public housing unit sat vacant or in disrepair and invested more public housing, ESIA clients wouldn't be at the mercy of their private landlords. My question to the minister: her government is sitting on the remaining $16 million of the housing trust that must be spent by next year. So why not invest in more nonprofit, co-op, and public housing?
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And you know, Mr. Speaker, it's not often, Mr. Speaker, that I find myself perplexed with the inability of my honourable colleague to understand the true needs of Nova Scotians who are vulnerable in this province, Mr. Speaker, for he does have a caring side for the individuals that we serve. But, Mr. Speaker, when he asks that we not increase those allowances, I'm not in agreement with that at all, Mr. Speaker. This side of the House will increase personal allowances, Mr. Speaker. We do believe that it's necessary. We will be doing that today in our budget. And, Mr. Speaker, don't even get me going on affordable housing. $14.9 million in this year's budget that he's going to vote no against, Mr. Speaker. Shame, Mr. Speaker. Shame. How about the $21.6 million committed in this year's budget for affordable housing for Nova Scotians? That's what this side of the House, that's what the Liberals understand is needed. It's unfortunate that the NDP just don't get it, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Dartmouth North on his final supplementary.
Well, Mr. Speaker, again, I do understand what Nova Scotians need, and that's why I raised the important question. A $4 personal allowance increase is not going to be enough to pay people's rents. That's why we asked from this side for a shelter allowance increase. Mr. Speaker, subsidized and affordable housing options for families relying on social assistance is critical, and the minister knows that. It is part of the hand-up her department claims it wants to provide. But instead, shelter allowances are frozen, and clients are spending more and more of their personal allowance on rent. And that's shameful, Mr. Speaker. I ask the minister right now, why won't her department invest in new public housing and non-profit affordable housing for the sake of low-income families?
Honourable the Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. You know, Mr. Speaker, raising a question doesn't prove that you get it. Putting your efforts into helping Nova Scotians proves that you get it. That's what this Premier is doing. That's what this side of the House is doing. That's what the Liberal Party in Nova Scotia understand needs to be done. Shameful, Mr. Speaker. Shameful is voting no for $21.6 million for affordable housing for Nova Scotians. That's shameful, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Waverley Fall River Beaverbank.
Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Waverley Fall River Beaverbank has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, yesterday's Chronicle Herald quoted the minister.
26.
Yesterday's Chronicle Herald quoted the Minister of Education as saying, teachers, and I quote, teachers in many schools supervise students at lunchtime, even though their union contract says they don't have to. And if it pleases the House, I will be more than willing to table that. So my question to the minister seems to think that a good way to implement the new legislation around lunchtime supervision is to ask the support. I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker. Is it to be supported? Is to ask teachers to ignore their contract? Does the minister think?
Order, please. Order. Order, please. Order, please. The time allotted for oral question period has expired. The Honourable Member for Cape Breton Nova on an introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in your gallery today, I see a good friend and mentor, the former Member of Parliament for Sydney, Victoria, and now working at Halifax legal aid lawyer, Peter Mancini. I'd like a warm welcome of the host for Peter, please.
Honourable Member for Halifax Needham on an introduction.
Thank you very much, and I'd like to thank the honourable member from Clayton Park, I know is attempting to get the floor. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to draw attention of the members to the West Gallery, where we're joined today by Danny Kavanagh, the president of CUPE here in Nova Scotia, and I'd ask him to rise and receive the warm welcome of the House.
The Honourable Member for Halifax Clayton Park, I should say the Honourable very patient member for Halifax Clayton Park.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Speaker, I rise on a point of privilege. Whereas the minister has not provided the names of who he'd met with in the Build It Right group, and today I tabled a letter where the group executive had denied meeting with the minister, although they have made repeated requests and would like to. I believe that the Minister of Health Promotion and Protection has misled the House, and I would like to ask you to rule again on this point of privilege.
I will take the new information under advisement and get back to you. Thank you. The Honourable, the Deputy Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I would move that you now do rise and this House resolve itself in the Committee of the Whole House on Supply unto Her Majesty.
The Honourable, the Member for Queens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's my great pleasure to rise in the House today and speak to the great riding of Queens. The riding of Queens, as I've said before in this House, is very diverse, very rich in history and culture. We revolve around the economies of forestry and fisheries, small industry, small business. We have beautiful beaches, beautiful lakes, beautiful rivers. We're a great tourist destination, and we have wonderful, friendly people in the riding of Queens. Last night, while I was in the House, I was unable to attend the opening of the 9th biannual Liverpool International Theatre Festival. This theatre festival hosts amateur theatre troupes from all around the world. We have troupes from Israel, Syria, Germany, Spain, Wales, the US, and Slovakia, as well as troupes, our very own troops from Nova Scotia. I would like to take the opportunity here to thank my assistant, Judy Millen, who had given my remarks and my regrets to the opening ceremonies last night, and I truly wanted to be there, but unfortunately, because the House is sitting and with estimates, I was not. So I want to say to those folks, to Judy, my assistant, and to the great folks that have helped bring the International Theatre Festival to Liverpool for the 9th biannual year. Kudos to them, and I will be seeing them over the weekend and some of the great talent. The event is being hosted by the Astor Theatre and our very own theatre troupes, the Winds of Change. I just want to point out that the Astor Theatre is one of the oldest performing arts venue in the province, and in 2002 they celebrated 100 years of bringing culture and talent and showing all of the great talented people in the riding of Queens. I want to bring the House's attention as well to another festival that's happening in the riding of Queens, and that's the Tent Dwellers Centennial Festival 2008. And this festival will be celebrating the 100th anniversary of Albert Bigelow Paine's historic route chronicled in the Tent Dwellers. This festival launch will happen this Saturday, and for any members of the House that would like to get away and just relax and experience some good fun times, I certainly would encourage them to come to the festival launch for the Tent Dwellers. Part of the launch happening on Sunday will see 8 experienced paddlers who will retrace that historic route that Albert Bigelow and friends made along the Mersey and the Tobiatic and the Shelburne rivers. The festival will also give visitors and residents the experience of the wilderness and recreation, history and music and the stories of our beautiful area. And I just want to let the host know as well, this festival will run until October. I also want to draw the House's attention to another festival that just happened recently. On May 4th, Queens saw the 63rd annual Queens County Music Festival. Mr. Speaker, students of all ages perform and demonstrate their musical talents through solo and group vocals, strings, choral, instrumental, and piano. These students receive awards and scholarships, and these young artists truly shine, and it's so encouraging to know that some of these young students may continue the pursuit of musical excellence. Queens was also host in 2007 to the Nova Scotia Music Week Awards, and musicians from all over Nova Scotia came into Queens showcasing their talents and participated in writer circles and met up with old acquaintances and new acquaintances. And the Mersey House won the Industry Award for Venue of the Year. And the Mersey House is owned by Michael Loveridge and Heather McIsaac Loveridge. And the Mersey House has been displaying and showcasing talent for many musicians, not only across Nova Scotia, but beyond Nova Scotia, from New Brunswick and other areas. And the Mersey House is truly a testament of showcasing great talent all across this province and beyond. Mr. Speaker, I just want to point out that Queens is fast becoming the festival capital of Nova Scotia, and we continue to showcase our arts, culture, talent, and communities. We have the Hank Snow Museum. We have Privateer Days festival that happens the long weekend of July. We have an annual Seafest festival in Brooklyn, happens every August for the last several years in our communities. And we have the Ukulele Kale Festival, which just hosted in 2007 its second festival. Queens is shining. We're in the spotlight, and we truly are an attraction for many visitors from outside of our province and in the province. And I would encourage all members to check out the Queens County website and look at all of the great festivals that are happening in our area, especially through the summer months. I want to bring the host's attention to a very important nonprofit organization that does some tremendous things in the riding of Queens, the Mersey Tobiatic Research Institute in Kempt. This is a nonprofit cooperative of landowners and researchers with a mandate to advance research and monitoring and management that promotes sustainable use of our natural resources in southwestern Nova Scotia. There are 120 members of the Mersey Tobiatic Research Institute and 25 partners, all involved in the good management and sustainable monitoring of our natural resources. The Mersey Tobiatic Research Institute are best known for their work with species at risk, and most of us are familiar with two of those species at risk that have been highlighted certainly in conversation in this House, that being the Blandings turtle and the eastern ribbon snake. And I just want to give kudos to all of the members and the partners that help out with all of the great research and all of the great work that's being done out of the Institute. I also want to talk about the Queens County Fairgrounds, which has been expanding in the last couple of years, not only with their buildings on the fairgrounds. They completed some time ago a riding ring for young riders. But they're also a great place to meet and greet with local producers, local farmers, and local community members and volunteers that participate in the many events that go with a good country fair. And the Queens County Fairgrounds is one of the places that brings many people together. Another very important group of community members, and that would be our Acadia First Nations. And we're so rich in our history in the riding of Queens, and the First Nations, the privateers, the many diverse people that make up our riding have brought forward some expertise, talent, their history and culture. And the Acadia First Nations recently purchased land on Shipyard Point in Liverpool, and they've been working over the past 2 years on plans to develop a Mi'kmaq interpretive center. And this center, Mr. Speaker, will provide authentic Mi'kmaq education, and preservation of the Acadia First Nations heritage and culture from along the Mersey River. And this is something that we in the riding of Queens are looking forward to greatly, to see this interpretive centre become a reality for our riding. And we would encourage many, many people from across this province and beyond to come and visit that interpretive centre when it's up and going. Mr. Speaker, other members in our community and other organizations includes the Queen's Community Health Board. And the Queen's Community Health Board has been in existence for many years now, building on the good health of the population of Queens. They've been moving forward over the last several years on many projects, healthy living programs for seniors, healthy living program for students, and they are constantly coming up with new and innovative ideas to reach out with the best interests and the well-being of all residents in the riding of Queens. And I give them kudos because they are a key component to the great healthcare services that are provided in the riding of Queens, and they certainly complement not only the hospital and the home care and VON agencies, but they also complement the other many other good programs that other community groups have been working on, and they certainly do deserve to be recognized. Many other groups and organizations need to be recognized as well, and I want to talk a little bit about some of the fire departments. Italy Cross Fire Department in my riding made application some time ago and to the province, and were recently awarded approval for an application to receive $250,000 from the provincial grant monies for fire departments. And I'm so pleased for this fire department because they have been housed in a small fire department that has been in need of an expansion for many, many years. And this fire department is moving forward with building a new fire department that will service a lot of communities in the Lunenburg West End of my riding, and I'm just so pleased for them because they do so much great service in the communities. Not only do they make sure that our communities are safe and protected in the event of a fire, but they also answer the call to motor vehicle accidents and other unfortunate accidents that occur within our communities, and they're always there, ready at the call when they're needed. And so I'm just so grateful that they are moving forward with their expansion. The United Communities Fire Department is a very unique fire department in the sense that they have come together. 3 communities have come together under the United Communities umbrella, and they decided 30-some years ago, because of a fire that had moved through one of the communities, and community members rallied around and decided after this particular fire in the community that they would all work together and become the United Communities Fire Department. And not only are they a United Communities Fire Department, but they're also a United Communities in the sense that they move forward with other programs that are important to community members. They have been, a lot of the volunteers there have been reaching out to seniors. They are putting in a transportation program for seniors to see seniors who are unable to get out and about to many community events. The United Communities volunteers will be helping greatly with the needs of seniors in their communities. The volunteers in our communities, Mr. Speaker, they are truly the folks that make things work. They make things happen through their dedication and commitment. They fundraise for a lot of our events. Not only do they fundraise, but they put in many hours of service to make sure our events and our community organizations work without a hitch. And they truly open their hearts and homes to many visitors who come and experience all the good things that happen in Queens. And to them, we owe a lot of kudos. And I just want to say, I know my time is running short, but I just want to close by saying I want to remember a very important volunteer who just passed away this Easter Monday in a tragic vehicle accident on the 103. Cyril Hupman was nominated and received one of the provincial volunteer awards at the 2007 award ceremonies here. And we were all truly saddened this past Easter, on Easter Monday, when many of us had gotten word that Cyril Hupman had passed away tragically in this car accident. And he will sadly be missed. The many friends and his family members, and certainly the communities that he served, and all of the community organizations that he gave of his time. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I believe my time is running out. 1 second. Thank you.
Oh, I would ask, Mr. Speaker, before we proceed with the estimates debate, if I could have the concurrence of the House to revert the order of business to the government notices of motion.
Is it agreed?
Agreed.
The Honourable the Minister of Service, Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations.
Thank you, Speaker, and I want to thank colleagues in the House for allowing the change in agenda. This is a sort of a special case. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Colleen Elliott, a Truro resident, has combined a 30-year nursing career where she worked mainly with seniors, a remarkable commitment to community, and a rich family life. Whereas Colleen Elliott has given generously of her time and talent to the Canadian Cancer Society locally, provincially, and nationally, and her work earned her, among other honours, the Canada 125 Medal, the Canadian Cancer Society Nova Scotia Division Volunteer of the Year Award in 1986, and the 2007 Canadian Cancer Society Distinguished Leadership Volunteer of the Year Award. And whereas Colleen Elliott, an honorary life member of the Canadian Cancer Society, has also been active in her church, a director of the Nova Scotia Research Foundation, and once won the Nasty Nutby 5-kilometre road race in her age group. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of this House congratulate and thank Colleen Elliott for her remarkable contribution to the Canadian Cancer Society, other community causes, and thank her husband John, son Brandon, and daughter Teresa Ferris for their unending support for Colleen's volunteer activities. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favour signify by saying aye. Against? Motion is carried. The Honourable the Government House Leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I move that you do now leave the chair and the House resolve itself in the committee of the whole House on supply and to Her Majesty.
So moved. We'll take a short recess as the Minister gets prepared for his estimates.
Order, please. We'll now continue with the estimates. The honourable member for Clare has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I want to continue where I left off last night. I had just started talking about crosswalk safety. Pardon me. Mr. Chairman, this past April, the Joint Crosswalk Safety Task Force made 42 recommendations to help improve crosswalk safety. These 42 recommendations focused on education, engineering, enforcement, and evaluation in their final report. At the same time, government announced funding totaling $300,000 over 3 years to help increase safety at crosswalks. The $300,000, Mr. Chair, of course, only $100,000 is available a year for the entire province. Naturally, $100,000, in my view, is certainly not enough to address a very serious issue in this province. We all realize that using crosswalks is a shared responsibility between pedestrians and drivers. But unfortunately, it's the pedestrians who have the most to lose. So my first question to the Minister is, how is the department planning to divide this $300,000 across the province over the next 3 years?
The Honourable the Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, the honourable member, for the question. I want to start off by thanking the honourable member for not only bringing the question forward today, but I know his involvement over the last, I would say, number of years in regards to his concern about road safety, and particularly about crosswalk safety. I know the honourable member has raised it many, many times in this House, both with myself and my predecessor. So I know that he's very concerned about the issue, as we all are, and as we all need to be in regards to ensuring that not only are our roads as safe as possible, but those who use them, particularly pedestrians, are as safe as possible. The task force that was formed in conjunction with HRM by my predecessor, the former minister, who's now the Minister of Economic Development, in conjunction with the HRM, formed a partnership to study this issue and to come back with those recommendations, which we've accepted them all. I believe 42 recommendations. As a result of that, we had discussions with the municipality, and I know I had discussions myself with His Worship Mayor Kelly about this very issue and what he would like to see in HRM in regards to crosswalk safety. The department determined that over the next 3 years we would commit an initial amount of $100,000 per year. I just want to remind the House that $100,000 would be matched by the municipality to access that money. So that $300,000 actually will become actually $600,000, or at least the initial amount could become $600,000. But I also want to remind the honourable member that this is just an initial first step for us. We believe it's an opportunity to replace existing lights, 8-inch lights with new 12-inch LED lights. It's an opportunity to test lights on parallel posts on these five sites that HRM has actually determined where they want to place this initial lighting and new system. As well, in those recommendations, the other recommendations talked about enforcement, engineering, education, and I can tell you that our Director of Communications in the Department of Transportation, Infrastructure Renewal, and others are working very hard in that regard. So the initial first step will be these 5 sites in HRM, but beyond that, Mr. Chair, and I want members to know in the House that beyond that, we're looking at the coming months and years where we intend to address the issues around engineering, the issues around education, particularly with new young drivers, and also any new technology that may be available. We've said that if any of these monies could be used for new technology, we're certainly willing to consider that if municipalities determine there's an opportunity to access technologies maybe used somewhere else or new technology that's developed. And the other thing I want to mention to the honourable member as well, that this money would only be available for municipalities where it's on roads that are either provincially owned or they were former cost-shared roads. So any other streets or roads within the municipality where there presently are crosswalk lighting would be the responsibility of the municipality. So it's fairly limited to the number of sites where we would cost-share with provincial money, keeping in mind that those are the sites. And again, this $300,000 that we announced, which we matched by the municipality, would become $600,000 over 3 years. But again, it's an initial start for us, and we believe there's lots more work that can be done.
Honourable member for Clare.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I thank the Minister for his answer. My next question, has the department been in contact with all municipalities to inform them of this cost-share funding that's available to help them address crosswalk safety within their jurisdictions?
The Honourable the Member of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And we, at this point, we have notified UNSM. I guess at the start of the process back earlier on, this partnership that was formed was between the province and HRM, and initially, as the honourable member would understand, a lot of the issues that were coming to the forefront that brought this initiative about were actually things that had happened here in HRM, and we did meet with them and work with them. And but I do believe since we've announced this money that there has been communication, I believe, at this point with UNSM to notify the municipalities. And if not, we'll ensure that does happen, because even though the bigger municipalities, whether it's in CBRM or here in HRM, would, I'm sure, be a lot more interested in maybe in these projects, there are probably some other municipalities throughout the province that we need to communicate with, and we will ensure that happens.
The Honourable Member for Clare.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I thank the Minister for his answer. Mr. Chair, I'm just wondering, with the 42 recommendations that this joint task force on crosswalk safety made, will the province be making any other announcement anytime soon to help implement any more of the joint crosswalk safety task force recommendations?
Honourable the Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal.
Stages, eh? Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I thank the member opposite for the question. I will tell the honourable member in the House that as when you look at those 42 recommendations, there's a cross section of other departments that are involved, whether it's Service Nova Scotia, Department of Justice, Health Promotion. I know we've shared and met and shared those recommendations with them. They're well aware of those as well. There's an interdepartmental committee that's been established. As I said earlier, our Director of Communications is very heavily involved in all those recommendations and how we may implement. As I say, we've not only accepted them, but we're going to adopt, to the best of our ability, to adopt those recommendations, and some of them are going to take quite a bit of work, particularly around the education part, but I believe that there's a great opportunity not only to educate drivers, existing drivers, but particularly in our education system. So it's going to mean involving the Department of Education in regards to how we move forward with these recommendations. I think that suffice to say that as I said earlier, I think in the House during question period one day, a member asked about it. The quickest way, and I guess the quickest recommendation that we can look at and I guess agree to would be the actual lighting, which we've done, and we're moving on now. Some of the other ones are going to take quite a bit of time, but I can't tell the honourable member today specifically when we'll be coming out with any more announcements, but I can tell you there's a lot of work within the department presently, and we've accepted the recommendation. We're going to work towards rolling those out as soon as we can.
The Honourable Member for Clare.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I just have one final question on crosswalk safety. Crosswalk safety, Mr. Chair, is certainly not unique to this province alone. I'm sure other jurisdictions have been looking at crosswalk safety. I'm just curious, the Minister indicated that the department staff is certainly working on this file. I'm just curious, has the department staff done any work at looking how other jurisdictions across Canada or outside our country have addressed the issue of crosswalk safety?
The Honourable the Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the member opposite for the question. The answer is yes. The department staff have looked at other jurisdictions in Canada and outside of Canada. They've done that prior to, and as well, the committee that was set up also looked at other jurisdictions as well, and that's why there are a lot of suggestions around things that people in this province would come up with all kinds of ideas of things that we could possibly do, whether maybe red lights instead of amber lights, the half-stop lights. There's a lot of discussion about what options there may be. That's part of the reason why, first of all, the committee came back with certain recommendations which we accepted. They looked and reviewed all those options, and we've accepted those, and we're moving forward with the amber lights, the bigger LED lights. But as well, we left the door open, I guess, to the possibility of any technology that may come along, or new techniques, I guess, that may assist us with making crosswalks safer. So that's why we've said that if there's, we would consider new technology as well. So if there are other things that are happening in other jurisdictions, or if they develop new programs or technology that would help us here, we're certainly willing to consider it.
The honourable member for Clare.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I certainly want to recognize, the fact that the government is putting, $300,000 over the next 3 years that will be matched, of course. It's definitely a step in the right direction, and I think the government should be congratulated on taking that initiative. Is it going to fix all the problems? Probably not. But I think, again, it certainly is an indication from this government that they are taking crosswalk safety as a very important issue in this province. Mr. Chair, I want to move on to another topic. I know throughout these estimates I've been raising a variety of unusual topics with the minister, so I certainly want to continue with that. My next topic is concrete pavement. Mr. Chair, I'm aware there's 2 sections of our roads where concrete was used for pavement. One section was done on Highway 104 near Oxford, and another section was done on Highway 101 near St. Croix, near Windsor. Mr. Chair, I'm sure the department staff has had plenty of time to evaluate both of these projects, and we've heard the minister, talking earlier during the estimates about the high price of oil, which certainly impacts on the price of liquid asphalt. My question to the minister: is the department considering doing more concrete paving in Nova Scotia?
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the member opposite for the question. I agree with the honourable member. Those 2 sections of the highway, one of which is in my own constituency, have stood up very well. In fact, many times constituents will say to me, they've watched how pavements has happened on both ends of that, and yet that's definitely stood the test of time. And I think the honourable member would agree and understand as well that, cement versus pavement, there's quite a bit of a higher cost to pavement, but obviously